listening to The Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Golseth.
We get to talk about theological education at the Concordia Seminary Theological Symposium coming up very soon. We're going to talk about what's happening there and a very current, very relevant topic that you will want to dig into at Symposium. We're going to dig into that here in just a moment. Thanks to Concordia University, Wisconsin for supporting the Coffee Hour. Find out more about Concordia University, Wisconsin at cuw.edu.
Live uncommon.
Joining us today, Dr. David Maxwell, Professor of Systematic Theology, Chairman of the Department of Systematic Theology, and also a plenary speaker at the upcoming Concordia Seminary Theological Symposium. Dr. Maxwell, welcome to the Coffee Hour.
Thank you.
Also joining us today, Dr. Kevin Gold, Director of Resident Field Education, Associate Professor of Exegetical Theology, and Dean of Theological Research and Publication at Concordia Seminary in St. Louis. Dr. Gold, welcome.
Always good to be with you, Andy.
And Director of Continuing Education at Concordia Seminary, St. Louis, Erika Petsch. Erika, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here again.
Looking forward to talking about the upcoming Theological Symposium taking place here in St. Louis, September 17th through 18th, which means if you're going to register, now's the time to register for this. The theme, the title this year, Technology and the Church, Promise and Peril. Dr. Maxwell, it sounds like we're going to be taking a look at artificial intelligence. Why should we consider the relationship of artificial intelligence to the soul?
Well, I'm going to be doing a presentation with Dr. Holman, and he's going to do the soul part. My part of it is just to try to explain how AI works on a very basic level and to make the point that my main point is it's not the same as a computer program. And so it seems obvious that the computer programs raise no questions about soul, but I think AI might. And so the first step in understanding what kind of questions that there might be is that you have to understand how it's different than a computer program.
What are some of those ways? Can you give us a teaser of some of the ways that we might consider what artificial intelligence is and how we relate to it?
Well, it's hard to describe it without pictures, and I will have pictures in the plenary presentation. But the basic idea is a computer program is a set of instructions that are explicit. If this is the case, then do this, and if this, then do something else, right? And AI doesn't work like that. It's a set of what they call artificial neurons, which are simply numbers, and they're connected to a bunch of other numbers through calculus. It sort of models the way a neural network, a biological neural network, is constructed, and not exactly, but that's the basic pattern that it follows. And it doesn't actually have a set of instructions at all. And yet it's able to manifest properties that start to look like intelligence. And we'll talk about, what those are. And I'll be referring to a research paper that Microsoft put out, I believe it was in 2022, it's entitled Sparks of Artificial General Intelligence, Early Experiments in GPT-4. And so that's going to be my kind of base for what are the capabilities. I'm sure the capabilities have advanced since then, but that's what I'm going to use.
How did this become important to you as a seminary professor? I would imagine much of your study has been in theology, particularly in systematic theology. Where did AI and technology become important to you as a seminary professor? And how does this intersect with what you get to teach every day at the seminary?
Well, I have hobbies, and one of my hobbies is computer programming. And so a number of years ago, I was watching a series of YouTube videos on how to build a neural network on your home computer, which I kind of followed the instructions. And so this was before the AI came. I mean, AI existed, but it hadn't yet made the big splash that it did in 2022. And so that's what got me thinking about it.
How do you see this intersection in your own life? Since this is a hobby for you, and obviously you really love theology also, how has this become something in your own life that you've wrestled with, this intersection of artificial intelligence and theology?
Well, I don't know that I have exactly wrestled with it. It's just that my point is it's probably too early to really wrestle with it. My point at this point is just don't assume there's nothing there, like that there aren't any big questions. I think there are some huge questions, and I don't know what the answers are.
Mm-hmm.
What are the questions that have started to arise for you as a seminary professor, for pastors, for congregations? What are some?
Well, basically the thing is that you have a situation where AI is able to exhibit qualities that we thought only humans could do, right? Like understanding emotions. GPT-4 can have a discussion about emotions that makes perfect sense, right? Writing papers, writing music, doing art, all of this stuff AI can do. Now you might say, well, it's not really doing it itself. It's mimicking us, or it doesn't count somehow. But I think the question is going to be, at some point, people are going to start asking, well, if it can pass a law exam, like pass the bar, if it can produce convincing art and so forth, at what point do you have to sort of stop saying it's just pretend? Maybe that's all, the question could get flipped, that maybe really all we are is this complex computer algorithm. Now, I don't think that's true, but I think that's the question that it poses, and that we're going to have to wrestle with, and we probably should start thinking about it now. And because if you think about it, in the 1950s, it was Alan Turing that proposed what's called the Turing test, like how will we know if machines can think? And basically the Turing test is, if it can fool us, then it can think. There's no way to peer into its inner workings and detect a soul or something like that. All you have to go by is what's the output. And if we find the output convincing, then you might as well say that it thinks.
Yeah, fascinating questions to consider, and obviously a need for a conversation like this to happen at a theological symposium. Dr. Golden, what about you? What questions have arisen for the faculty and the students that you get to have conversations with about technology and theology?
So I remember about 2 years ago, I had students come into class and they had used ChatGPT to produce a sermon, and they had given it kind of a text to work off of, and told it write a Lutheran sermon off of this. And they were reading through this, and it was kind of a big joke in the class. But the thing was, it actually sounded halfway decent. And I won't be unkind to any of our students to say that it was better than some sermons that I've read from students or anything like that. But it was interesting, what David was describing about how it can mimic what it learns as it piles through information, and therefore it came back with stuff that you could see a law gospel kind of dynamic going on in the sermon and things like that. Now, it was really lacking in a whole lot of regards. And this is the thing that I noticed but this is where, again, after 2 years, things have improved significantly in that regard. But what I noticed was it was really lacking in what I might call personality, that it was just kind of rather dry and straightforward. It didn't really address a specific individual. Which is, again, one of the things we work with students on, is making sure you actually have an actual congregation in mind, that you're talking to them, that you're communicating with them as you go about your sermon and such. Now, the other thing that strikes me here is that, we do have a subtitle for the symposium, Promise and Peril. And it's a recognition that technology does bring great promise, but also technology, like any other good gift from God, can be abused and misused, and that is to our peril. And this has been with us ever since the fall into sin. As an Old Testament guy, I immediately think of something as the building technologies that we have, so that you have the exact same substance that is used at God's own command in the building of the ark, namely pitch, kind of like a tar that is placed on the ark in order to help waterproof it. So there it is promised, because it's about God preserving life. But then that same substance is used a few chapters later in the construction of the tower at Babel, maybe to make it, if you will, a bit waterproof, because they still have memories of the flood. So the point is just simply that, technology is a gift from God. It can be used for good. It can be used for bad, just like anything else. And so that's some of the stuff we constantly have to wrestle with. This is not new to us when it comes to AI. It's just the latest example of how we have to look at the technology that we've been given and wrestle with it to figure out how is it used for good? What are the perils, the problems, opportunities for sin that are found there as well?
Dr. Golden, how has the Theological Symposium at Concordia Seminary served the church for over 30 years now? How does the symposium serve the church?
Well, in a variety of ways. One of those is by it's a great way for our pastors, whether they're alumni of Concordia Seminary or our sister seminary or anywhere, to come and just receive some edification, to be strengthened and presented with something new so that it hones their own thinking and such. It's also a great opportunity for our students to engage in the task of theology when it's not required, if you will, so that there's not necessarily an assignment that is attached to this. But we suspend classes for 2 days so that students, well, really are required to be there, but they aren't necessarily with a course assignment that is attached to it. But it is a great example of within the Department of Theological Research and Publication, over which I have oversight and in which Erika works as our Director of Continuing Education, we talk about the vigorous life of the mind. And that's one of the great things that the Theological Symposium is about. It's the vigorous life of the mind as we tackle complex subjects, but we do it under the guidance of Scripture and what the Lord has given us also, even in first article information, such as technology.
What are you hoping that the students and all the attendees this year are going to gain from all of the different opportunities that we'll talk more about in the second half of the show? All the opportunities that are available for the different sessions, plenaries, breakouts. What are you hoping that the attendees will learn, Dr. Golden?
Well, I'm going to build off of what Dr. Maxwell was saying earlier, in that there are a lot of questions to be asked here. And so one is I would trust that they will walk away saying, hey, there's a lot of things to consider, but then also not be too quick to answer those questions with a degree of certainty that is not yet warranted. Now, there's a lot of this that we have to look back on and say down the road that we can make a better decision. Kind of like, talk about technology. I understand that there's a centennial anniversary of some kind of technology going on with radio or something like that, and specifically KFUO radio. All right. Now, I understand I'm not an expert on this, but I understand that 100 years ago when KFUO was launching, that was a little bit controversial, that it was kind of pushing the envelopes on the latest communication technology. Now, I think looking back, we can say, hey, KFUO, that was one of the wisest decisions that was made at that time. But at the time, they weren't so certain. And so to come to conclusive answers when immediately is a little bit foolhardy. You have to, you enter in looking both at promise and peril, make the best decision you can, but then recognize down the road, you can say, you know what? Either we made the right decision or we didn't.
Before we let both of the professors go, each of you, Dr. Maxwell, we'll start with you. What's the highlight? What are you looking forward to in Symposium this year?
Well, other than making it through my presentation, I just want to hear about the variety of different kinds of technology and promises and perils, because this isn't just limited to one kind. And so it's very interesting to see how the church has engaged many different kinds.
Dr. Golden, highlight for you at Symposium?
Yeah, I'll echo that, is that, hey, it's not just AI. There's medical technology, there's transportation technology all over the place. So there's a wealth of different issues to be addressed. But also, I would just simply say, I always look forward to Symposium because of the fellowship that goes on there. So even in the midst of the vigorous life in the mind, some challenging questions that we need to address, at the same time, getting to connect with a lot of people in person, that this is my big chance every year to see them with us.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today. We're going to catch up with Erika here in just a moment, learn more about the details how to attend this year's symposium. Dr. David Maxwell, Professor of Systematic Theology at Concordia Seminary in St. Louis. Dr. Maxwell, thanks for being our guest today.
Thank you.
And Dr. Kevin Golden, Director of Resident Field Education and Associate Professor of Exegetical Theology. at Concordia Seminary in St. Louis. Dr. Golden, thanks for being our guest.
Always a pleasure.
We'll continue the conversation in just a moment with Erika Petsch, Director of Continuing Education at Concordia Seminary in St. Louis, right here on the Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Golseth.
At Concordia University, Wisconsin, we believe you were created for a reason: to use your God-given gifts to help others, to live a life of self-sacrifice in a me-first world, to live a life that's uncommon. Whether you're taking one of 50-plus online programs or learning with us in person on the shores of Lake Michigan, you'll be equipped to make an uncommon impact. Learn more at csl.edu. Concordia University, Wisconsin. Live uncommon.
Welcome back to the Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Golseth.
We are learning about the upcoming Theological Symposium at Concordia Seminary in St. Louis, Technology and the Church, Promise and Peril, taking place September 17th and 18th at Concordia Seminary, St. Louis. Joining us now, Erika Petsch, Director of Continuing Education at Concordia Seminary in St. Louis. Erika, thanks for joining us today and for all the great work you do in continuing education, always letting us be a part of it as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's fun.
So the Theological Symposium, this is the 34th, right?
Yes, it is.
So that means over 30 years of Theological Symposium, which is not just students at Concordia Seminary, but a much broader audience, right?
It really is.
So who attends Theological Symposium? Who's invited to come be a part of this?
Sure. Pretty much we send it out to all of our churches, but then we also promote it to our local other seminaries and universities, Washington University, St. Louis University, Covenant, Kenrick. But we mostly promote it to our pastors, but we do get a lot of lay people, educators, DCEs, deaconesses. Yeah. It's a wide audience.
Yeah. And when you're thinking of an event for such a wide audience, what goes into thinking about what kind of topics you'll cover? It's something that you know is going to be covering a broad audience, but it also has a focus on theology. What goes into that planning of thinking of what's going to be something that people want to hear?
So this topic was really fun because obviously we wanted to have a really good theological perspective on it. So our faculty, David Maxwell, as we mentioned, Joel Okamoto is going to be kicking off the whole thing. He's not going to be talking as long as everybody else, but about 15 minutes just to introduce. So we're pretty excited about that. And then one thing that we also do is we always do a call for papers in the spring. So pastors, theologians, educators can submit their abstracts to be able to present at symposium. One thing that we learned during COVID was pre-recording and having videos available later on our website. Well, now we still do that. We still bring everybody in to present, but we ask the people that responded to the call for papers to send us a video of their presentation also. So it opens up a wider audience for them as well. But the other thing that was great with this topic, we reached out to our Concordia University system. So David Maxwell mentioned that he's going to be doing a plenary with Josh Holman from Concordia St. Paul. We also have a plenary by President Bernard Bull at Concordia, Nebraska. We have a breakout session by Joel Hesch at Concordia Irvine. And then we also have Mark Wolf, who is at Concordia, Wisconsin. So I'm pretty excited about that because that's just going to give a lot more voices for this symposium.
Yeah.
That's a great lineup. Now, I'm kind of curious. You mentioned Dr. Bernard Bull from Concordia, Nebraska. I'm kind of wondering maybe this is just a demonstration of AI because I'm not convinced he's human as much as that guy can read. I just kind of wonder.
Funny.
Have you ever seen how much he reads?
I have not. I just met him recently.
It's phenomenal. If you ask him when you see him next time what he's reading, he'll probably have a list of about 10, 20 books that he's currently reading. Just an extremely brilliant guy. And that's a great lineup that you have listed there. So it's bound to be just an excellent event for learning. And as Dr. Golden mentioned, for fellowship as well. What are the opportunities for fellowship at Theological Symposium?
So we have coffee and refreshments, of course, on both mornings after chapel. We have lunch both days, and then we have appetizers and beer and wine the Tuesday night. We are doing something a little different this year so that everybody can participate in the meals. We are having a flat registration cost and then an additional cost to add meals. So, and it's not all or none. It's, I can only go to Tuesday lunch or, whatever. So that way students and faculty that want to be a part of the meals can participate that way. They attend for free,
Sure.
but then the meals they can pay for. It's pretty reasonable.
And gathering around meals gives much more of an opportunity for conversation and fellowship.
And we're hoping for great weather. We have had some symposiums the third week of September that have been extremely hot, and we wished we were inside. But the Tuesday evening meal will be outside under a tent, and that's a lot of fun.
You just never know at St. Louis in September. What do we need to know in order to attend Theological Symposium at Concordia Seminary?
Sure. So registration is open right now. It is open until midnight on September 4th. So if people want to register, they need to do so by then. We just had orientation this week at the seminary. So all of the new students and all the students coming back from vicarage, I said September 4th is coming very quickly. So as students, you still need to register to attend, even though it's free. So they can just go to our website, .edu, and go to the resources and continuing education section, Theological Symposium. They can pick from, I think there's like 20 breakout sessions from some of our recent graduates, which is always exciting. Trevor Sutton is going to be with us, a big name in technology, right, in our church. So yeah, just go to the website, register. Like I said, it will give you a lineup of meals for both days and the dinner. And if you have a spouse or significant other that is in town with you, you can also add a dinner for them.
Well, that's a nice feature if someone is with you and you want to have a meal with them, but they don't necessarily want to be with you all day.
Right.
You can do that. And those, as the professor said, those fellowship opportunities are just really great to be able to talk about everything that you're learning, because there's a lot that happens over these 2 days, and being able to hash some of that out with your colleagues is really a cool experience.
And I would be remiss if I didn't also mention that after dinner on that Tuesday, the 17th, we do have the annual Jack Dean Kingsbury lecture that Dr. Jim Veltz comes in, and that's open to the public also. So that's at 7 p.m. in our Warner Auditorium.
That's a very important thing to know.
Yes.
What are some of the things that you're looking forward to? Because you've been through several of these symposiums. What are you looking forward to from this year's?
Well, kind of as I mentioned already, I'm excited that we're bringing in some of the professors from our Concordia universities.
Yeah.
I think that's going to bring a really great aspect. It's always fun to see our recent grads come back. Of course, I've been at the seminary now for 12 years, so I'm like, recent grad. Oh, wait, you graduated 10 years ago. I guess that's not that recent, but it's so exciting that a lot of our younger pastors are coming back for continuing education. And like I said, some of them are even presenting. So I really enjoy that. It's a great fellowship time. Plus, we have a lot of sponsors, different other LCMS entities that come, like a lot of conferences do. And so that's fun too, to do a little networking with people here at LCMS headquarters, but Concordia Publishing House, Lutheran Hour Ministries, so forth. So that's makes it really nice too.
Yeah.
For those who are traveling to St. Louis for Theological Symposium at Concordia Seminary, what do they need to know about finding arrangements for lodging, things like that? Do you have information on the website about that?
We do have information. Thank you for bringing that up, Andy. In fact, we do have some rooms still available on campus, dormitory style, pretty simplistic, but some people love that to go back to, I remember when I used to stay in the dorms, when I was at seminary. So we do have some rooms, and those are available on the online registration. But then we also, at the top of the registration page, have a list of lodging and hotels close by. The Cheshire Inn is always a big favorite. They give us a great price. Drury Inn, Hampton Inn. So lots of options.
The Cheshire is an unusual place.
I love the Cheshire.
If you have a name like that, I think it has to be unusual.
Again, the website where we find more information about the upcoming Theological Symposium?
Sure. It's csl.edu /resources and then continuing education.
Very good. And I'm sure you can find it right there under continuing education. Lots of great information there about the upcoming Theological Symposium at Concordia Seminary in St. Louis, taking place September 17th through 18th. Talking about technology and the church and promise and peril. Wow. It's going to be a great symposium. Erika, thank you so much for spending this time with us and sharing with us about the upcoming symposium. It's always great to visit.
Thank you.
You've been listening to The Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Golseth.
The Coffee Hour with Andy and Sarah is a production of KFUO. To support The Coffee Hour and KFUO Radio, visit kfuo.org. You can also text KFUO to 41444 or send an email to gifts@kfuo.org. And you can call us at 800-844-0524. KFUO. Christ for you, anytime, anywhere.